Hello and welcome back to this third episode on entrepreneurship. I hope you enjoyed the previous two and really how insightful and deep thinking was the last two. I think we certainly benefited from it. I hope you did, Shahja and Lucky. We have a new guest for this session, and this session is titled The Perfect Team. So we've now considered the product in relation to our customers' needs. So now let's discuss the team. Who's going to run this show and how are we going to do it, right? So behind any business success lies a great team. This applies equally to startups as much as it does to conglomerates. A team exists to allow an endeavor to grow, to scale, and thrive in a way that would be impossible for one person to do. A successful team starts with hiring the right people. They are goal-orientated and they have respect for the structure that most businesses require. However, once the right people are in place, they need to act in a cohesive unit. Even the most innovative entrepreneur cannot scale beyond an idea without the help of a good team, even if it's just a handful of people. There's too much work for one person to do it all on their own. As good as a business idea may be, it will not function optimally without a dynamic team working cohesively to execute a shared business plan. But how and where do we find the right people? And more importantly, how do you keep them excited and energized to give their best so that the business can give its best? Right? And to help us navigate through this HR quagmire, we have a wonderful human resource
Yes.
in the name of Kim Morkel. Kim is a founding director at in-house Montessori and a consummate professional with over 20 years of management, marketing, communications, and people integration and customer experience. That's a mouthful. Yes. Meaning she's done everything. Okay?
No,
Kim has occupied a number of leadership positions across the services, wholesale, and retail sector. She's completing her master's in management degree in the field of innovation studies at Business School. But most importantly, Kim is an alumni of Regent Business School, having completed her postgraduate studies with us. Kim, these are two students who are currently doing the entrepreneurship program with us. So you are talking to fellow RBSs here.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
I leave it to you, Kim. Let's go.
Thank you so much, Hussein, and it's nice to meet you, Lucky and Shazia, and to spend this time with you. I think, as Hussein said, this session or this segment is really about us talking about the human resources component. And as you know, when you're doing the entrepreneurship model, there are different resources that are required for when you start a business. It's land, it's capital, and people. And as I was sharing with Hussein, in preparation for this, people I think is the most complex to manage because you don't have to have a one-on-one with land or capital. You don't have to navigate through the emotions. There's no conflict management. So there's a couple of things that a person has to consider when building this perfect team. And as Hussein said, nothing is perfect, but what you want to do is you rather get the perfect fit in terms of the team that you need for your organization. So I think just before we start, if you can give me an idea of what your team currently looks like. How many people, and if you can tell me sort of, what are the skills that you have in your team?
I think we have about five of us, yeah. 5 of us, me being the CEO and the leader of the team, and Lucky being my right-hand man. Then we have Tatu, who also has a background in sports in some type of way. We have Antoinette, who already has the experience in running a non-profit organization. So she knows the ins and outs of it, and she's helping us with that and our connections and whatnot. Then we have Matsidiso, who's actually going to be our HR manager doing the books. So I think all of us have our skills in some type of way. Lucky being on financials. We all have our backgrounds and what we work on as we sit on a team, and who's doing what, and who's managing which section. And I think myself, I'm centered on the sports side, and I want to see that everything goes well and that everyone has the same idea that we all trying to project in a type of way, and I'm trying to manage that and see that through. Lucky, I will not even speak about numbers. I will not touch on that subject.
Okay.
So can I
that's our team,
just quickly. So if the previous two sessions was about creativity and throwing the books out of the window and thinking wild, HR, for the right reasons, is a very structured discussion.
Yes. And I did sit in on the previous session, and I nearly got up and got a mic to join the session when Zubair said, things must be messy. Messy is good. And I thought, oh my word. Absolutely not when it comes to HR, because there's, especially in South Africa, I mean, there's regulatory issues that you have to deal with. And employees have rights, and if you don't manage that in a very structured way, if your admin processes are not correct, you can end up with some legal or CCMA cases. So I think it's great that you kind of know what your core strengths and capabilities are. And just before I go into the nitty-gritty of it all, if I were to get each of you in a room individually and ask you, what is the purpose of your business and why do you exist? Do you think that you'd all give me the same answer?
Yeah, more or less.
I think all of us have different views. All of us have different views.
We put each other on the same.
I think we all bounce off of each other's ideas. You come up with one idea. I came with one idea. Like he said, okay, no, we can throw this in. Then you have Chachu who says, yeah, we can throw this in as well. So I think we'll all sit and we'll say the same thing, but in a different perspective as to how we understand it or how we see it in a way.
Okay, so what I'd like to share with you, just from my perspective, when we started our business in Montessori, there are three directors, three of us. Each of us, we understand what our own strengths are, and about 6 months into the journey, as we were speaking to different people, we realized that we were not explaining the business in the same way. We were explaining it from different perspectives, right? So I think one of the things when building the perfect team is that you have to everybody has to be crystal clear about what the purpose of this business is and what the values are. So if you ask any of the three of us, why does inHome Montessori exist? We will say, we exist to unlock human potential in every parent and every child on earth. And that is it. Do you have something like that? Like a
what
tagline?
They would typically call a mission statement or a vision statement or something like that.
Yeah, we do actually.
You have that.
Okay, we do have that. Yeah, I think everyone knows what that is, and I think everyone knows what the core purpose of what we are is.
Yes, that's good. So when you speak about the business, you must speak a lot using that sort of as your framework. And then similarly, or following through from that, what are your values? What are the things that make you a team and bring you together? Have you defined that as well?
Our values. I know as far as I know, we have not had an intersection like that where we try to find out away from sports and what we want to do.
Yes.
Maybe find out about individuals in the team. Like, what's going on with you? What? In fact, we've never went even to that level of asking each other, like besides finding black collar here in the region, what was your plan as an individual? Just to find out the background of the people that you're trying to work with.
Yeah.
But maybe repose that question. Are you asking that question in the context of the business, i.e., black collar?
Yes.
Or you're asking it in the personal life? Because at some point, although personal lives come into work and work goes into personal life, the values that you need to share are in relation to business.
Yes.
What happens behind people's closed doors is their own life.
Yes.
But when you are here and you're representing black collar, we are all honest and whatever and customer first. So we're talking in the context of the business. Now, what is our value as a business?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
wrong, yeah. So as an example, we've got 5 values. I'll share 2 with you. So as a team, we've decided that one of our values is to laugh more. Right? So it's very stressful, in some of the things that we do. And so that was a very important value to us because we want to be able to enjoy work. Another value is to express ourselves authentically so that when we engage with each other as a team, we're always bringing our authentic selves to the table. And these values are important. These corporate and shared values are important because they guide you in your interactions with each other as a team. So that was a very useful exercise for us to do because obviously when you're working in a team, there's sometimes conflict or disagreement that arises. Egos come into play, and you can then take a step back and say, okay, but let's go back to what we've agreed and discussed in terms of that. So I think that's definitely a very useful exercise to do. So understanding your why, having that shared value actually leads you through to your purpose and your impact. So then moving on to, like I said, creating a structure, like structuring your organization. As I understand it, you are currently in startup phase.
Yes.
And I heard Shazia saying earlier that there are plans to expand, right? So I always think that it's good to start with the end in mind and know where it is that you're going. But currently where you are now, you have to understand that the structure that you put together now is going to be different as you expand and grow. So when you put together an organizational structure, it's about understanding what are the core capabilities that we require now. Have you gone through that kind of an exercise to reflect on what are the core capabilities this business needs now in order to function?
I think sitting down, being like having a confrontational meeting, thinking about the deep ends of the business haven't yet come to life. We were focused on what's going to be on paper a lot, and we haven't really sat down and really thought about, hey, tomorrow this might happen, what happens, we haven't really thought about that. And I think it makes it difficult because we live in very different areas. We're very far apart from each other. And I think we need to come to a place where we can be like, okay, we need to set up a meeting to discuss core values today. We need to set up a meeting to discuss, core capabilities or whatever we need to discuss. And I think it's, we need to lead up to that, and we haven't done that yet. Okay,
so if I can guide them, through the process of how to do it. Okay. So normally when you, thank you. Can I use? Thanks. So because essentially what we discussing now is an organizational design or an organizational structure, and most all corporates do this. And I'm suggesting that even though you are a startup, that you follow these principles because it's good to have them in place now, because once you expand and then to try and go back and try and fix it, it's actually, it's not going to work. So you're going to have, because if I remember correctly, what you have, yes, you've got an admin leg. If I remember from your business plan, you have an operations leg. Right, and you've got a customer experience leg. Those are your 3, right? So as a team, you have to sit together and say, what are the core capabilities that we need under admin? So we're not going to go through all of it, but if you give me an example of what you think a core capability of an admin person would be.
Organizational structure.
Organizational skills, yes. What else?
Obviously, the capability of reading, writing, like simple basic skills.
Communication. Okay. And this is And so you go through all of that, okay? So once you've listed whatever your core capabilities are under each of this, what you then do, that then feeds into your job profile. Because everybody needs to know what their job profile is, what their KPIs are. You know what KPIs are? Key performance indicators. So normally when you start a business, right, and it's what happened with us at inHome Montessori, we didn't go through this structured process initially because we were still kind of trying to find our feet. Someone was doing a little bit of this, someone was doing a little bit of that. But now that we've gone through the full 12-month business cycle, let's say, we understand what are the capabilities that we require in that business. We are now able to structure that accordingly and put KPIs in place. So KPIs are important because when Lucky, you said there's 5 or 6 of you, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have a conversation at the beginning of a financial year or at the beginning of a project and say, Lucky, I need you to do, or can we agree that these are the 5 things that you need to do according to your job profile? And obviously this needs to be done by, so it's goal setting, this needs to be done by this date, etc. And everybody, gets those KPIs, and that then feeds up into the overall strategy so that you can deliver on your strategy, right? But what happens 3 months down the line when we have those regular discussions, and after 3 months we see that you're not reaching some of your KPIs? How do you think that you would handle that?
This is an example. If you are supposed to be the finance person, then you must present a set of books. Let's keep it very simple. A set of books at each meeting. And what will the books tell you? The books will tell you how much we raised, how much we spent, where we spent. It's something simple like that. Now, it's a key need for an organization. If you come to a meeting and you don't have those facts and figures, we can't make decisions. And if we can't make decisions, we don't know where we can do the next project. So you've let the team down because you've not been able to produce that information. It may be in your head, but we don't need it in your head, we need a piece of paper. Right? So that is your key indicator. So maybe the first month they let you get away with it. All right, okay, we know we're busy, we've just started this. The 4th month now we need to make a decision. We can't because we don't know how much we've got in a bank account, how much we need to spend. We can't make a decision. But Lucky, you're letting us down. You're part of this team. We've agreed that you're going to give us financial. Am I going too far? Too fast?
No, this is yes.
So that's just one example if I choose on you. But also the more important one, Kim, is ultimately, is there a single decision maker? Although we would like to believe that, it's a kumbaya, like everyone sits together and we vote. Ultimately, there is somebody who takes the tough decision of yes and no.
Yes.
Right? And on what authority and who do you agree with? So, Shazia, you're driving somewhere and somebody approaches you and says, hey, here's a back of whatever my logo needs to be on it. And you say, yes, I accept it. You come to the team and you say, no, but we didn't agree on this guy, or we don't want this team, these people to support. On what authority do you do it? Where do you get your permission to do it? So that is partly, again, maybe I'm jumping the gun, so guide me on this.
No, it's fine.
Okay, carry on.
No,
if maybe I can say something. I don't know if maybe I'm correct, but through the organizations that I've served before, whether they are religious organizations and what has made that situation easy, it will be maybe if the organization itself, it has a constitution and a policy to police the constitution itself, which helps where it won't be something which is personal. If maybe you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, then it will appear that if maybe I sit on top of your case, it will appear as if maybe that is personal. But if there's a constitution and a policy, then it's not me who's saying it. It's the policy itself and the constitution which binds you as a member of this organization to
Can I just add? I think every situation has a solution. So let's say, I think for a certain situation, it depends on what situation it is, and then someone can decide whether are we doing this as a team, or am I deciding right now It's a risk that I have to take, and I can only take it now. I can't go consult. I think everything, it has a backstory, and you can't just, consult with the team over every single detail.
Agreed.
So I think every situation has a someone or some situation.
But as the CEO, you are the ultimate decision maker, but you have to agree up front what are those decisions where you have delegation of authority, and what are those decisions that you have to agree to as a team. You want to add something like that?
Yeah, man, like I said, I don't know how helpful will the development of something that I just mentioned, the constitution and policy, how helpful will it be on this stage of our, like, is it better for us to develop that right now on the starting phase, or maybe just go through it naturally, then on a later stage we try to incorporate constitutions?
So a constitution at startup phase I think is a bit heavy, but I do think what you need are terms of engagement or rules of engagement. And then as you move forward, you can start to build your policies. There are certain policies, for example, when you start employing staff, there are certain legislative policies that you have to have. And that's again a decision that you have to make. We've taken the decision that the three of us are going to be core, and our human resources, or the model that we're using, is we're outsourcing and not having employees. And I don't know what your plan is. Do you want to employ more people, or do you want to outsource and have contractors? Because that dynamic changes.
Yeah, I think at the initial stage, obviously, the easiest option, it will be outsourcing. But at the later stage, I mean,
we'll have to employ.
You would want everything to be, not everything, but most of the stuff that you want to be in control of them, and they should be in-house. Someone who can just stand up and approach and say, 1, 2, 3, why is it not
but
done?
then again, we can't see, as with the thing that we're working on, we can't be, directing every single coach out there, or coaching you in KZN being like, hey, you have to do this and this and this. Sometimes I think there's a point where we have to outsource, and there's a point where we have to, be in the company and be like, we're employing this and this.
And on that point, I mean, Usain started off with saying, how do you build the perfect team? How do you hire? That outsourcing, insourcing question is your it's your prerogative. But I think what one needs to be mindful of, and again it goes back to your purpose statement and your values, is that you have to choose the right partners, the partners that know your business, understand your business, have a passion for it. And I'll use an example. When we were looking for marketing partners, right, we followed a process where we interviewed a couple of agencies, that we wanted to outsource. And some of them were a bit cold and clinical and didn't really seem to understand our business and speak the language that we needed them to speak. And after, interviewing a couple of them, we landed on 2 that really seemed to understand and have the same passion for what it is that we required. So I think that's definitely something to look out for as well.
So although we haven't put it down, I think what I hope what has come out of us is that everything needs to be on a piece of paper. Whatever you may call that piece of paper, policy, constitution, guideline, whatever it is, but because unless it's on a piece of paper as a reference point for everyone, you can't hold somebody accountable for it. So the delegation, the KPI, does that. So, and I think that's where the structure of HR then comes in.
Because you also then have to understand, okay, so Lucky, we agreed that you were going to meet your KPIs. You haven't. Now what? That also has to be documented, because at the onset you have to understand what's going to happen if I don't meet. What is the consequence of that? Yeah. You want to say something, Lucky?
No, not really.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of, so when you get to the stage of actually, employing people, and you've got your HR person, you said she's doing HR and admin as well. Yeah, she would be responsible for ER issues. You have to think about leave management. All of those things are important. It's it's legislative. You have to think about leave management. You have to think about remuneration. At some stage, you have to think about benefits. There might be financial benefits or wellness benefits. And those are also, some things. It doesn't have to be as hectic as a big corporate environment, but these are some things that you have to think about in terms of, managing employees fairly and equitably.
Yeah. So again, although you're a social cause, and everyone currently buys into a common vision, don't take for granted that in 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, the person is going to be on the same page as you. Right? Inevitably, people being people, conflict is going to arise. Right? So unless you begin the process of some structuring, again, how you do that, we can work out the details of that. But unless you begin some process of structuring this entity, almost from day one, you don't set yourself up for conflict and failure in the future. I don't know if you heard. I mean, often you hear of founders have conflict and then they split up and then they're rivals with each other. And of course, it happens when they first hit the first jackpot, right? Yeah. But it can happen at any stage. It can happen over silly things about delegation of authority, responsibility, decision. So, and you're not. And actually, the document, whatever you want to call it, is actually there to protect and to guide. So, in your business plan, I noticed that you did say CEO and Chief Financial Officer does that. Has everyone bought into that? Does everyone understand, firstly, yes, that is your responsibility, yes, that's your responsibility. And what does that mean? Firstly, for you, what does COO mean? Does CFO mean? And what does it mean for her CFO? Right? So that you don't come tomorrow and make a demand of, that's not my job. Right? And you'll only find this problem, Shazia and Lucky, when you are successful. Not in the early stage. In the early stage, everyone will eat porridge. But once you start seeing success, then people will say, no, we need to move beyond the porridge. Where's the nyama?
Sushi, where's that?
Yeah. Hey, she will move to sushi. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's fine. That's perfect. So what do you think about what Tusain just said?
Yeah, that is absolutely true, because I think the structuring of the entity itself, I think it should start on the early stages. Yeah. That is my take on it, because like he says, Mr. Hussein says, conflicts, you cannot put the timeline on conflicts. They might be starting tomorrow or what. Maybe someone is really not doing what he's supposed to be doing. How are you going to question that? And how are you going to put him to account for it?
Yeah.
Because you basically have nothing on the table. Yeah. So it's your word against his. He says it's right. You say you are right. So
yeah. And just before we move off the topic of teams, I just want to put this out there as well. At a later stage, I mean, there's a lot of tools, you could call it, for how you can, I suppose, understand your team better. There's something called Belbin, BELBIN, team roles. And basically, it's an assessment that you do, and it tells you who in your team, and then it assigns a role. So it will say, okay, Hussein is the planter, which means that he's the guy that comes up with ideas based on whatever he's completed. I think you'll share this with him afterwards, Hussein. Lucky is the completer finisher. So he's the one that you can give him a task and you know he's going to complete it. And Shazia is what's the other one? Coordinator. She's really good at coordination, and so she fits under admin. So that's a nice tool to use. There's a lot of other tools that you could use. Discovery Insights is another one. What I want to caution you on when you get to that stage of using these tools, it's nice to know, because it helps you to identify these are the strengths within the team. The disadvantage of that is that, so I went through it at one stage many years ago with my team, and I was identified at that stage as the planter. I've always got good ideas, etc., etc. And for the next 2 or 3 years that I was in that team, whenever there was something creative that was required of me, they said, Kim, you are the planter. Nobody else tried to be creative. So caution, just be cautious of that as well, because It then caused conflict because then someone else put up their hand and said, but Kim is always getting the really cool stuff to do. I also want to try and express my creativity. So remember that to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The tool is just there for you to use and to understand your team better, but it's not a hard and fast. And for personal development, make sure that you kind of create that space for people to enhance their weaknesses as well and their challenges.
Great.
Okay. So when I was sitting and listening in on what Zubair was sharing with you around design thinking, I think one of the things that came up was stories, and the stories that you tell about your organization. And I think managing the reputation of your organization is really important, and how you do that, there's also a really cool tool to use. It's called the RepTrack model.
What does it do?
RepTrack. It's called the RepTrack model. So it manages, or it shares with you different dimensions of how you can manage reputation, both, with your internal stakeholders, which are your employees, but also your external stakeholders, which are the people that you're going to pitch to on different levels, right? So the different dimensions that make that up is the stories that you tell around your products and your services, the stories that you tell around how innovative you are, the stories that you tell around, what a great employer you are and how good you are in the workplace. And essentially that speaks to culture. Now, culture is not culture as in I'm colored from Cape Town and, Hussein, your culture. We're talking about an organizational culture. And again, it goes back to what we spoke about earlier in terms of what is the purpose, what are your values, how do we interact with each other, what are those unspoken rules. It's normally underpinned by things like integrity, respect, collaboration, those kinds of things. And do you already have that kind of a feeling or a vibe in your team at the moment? If you were to explain your culture to me.
So, for example, when you have a team meeting,
yes,
can anyone pick up the hand and say, hey, I got this idea? Or, Shazi, I disagree with you on this here. And you accept that because, of course, firstly, how it's said is important, right? There must be respect. So you can be very critical but respectful, and you don't take it personally. So the culture is, we want honesty from people. We want you to be critical of each other. Rather critically inside than be from the outside, right? But it requires a certain mindset and a maturity. So when you talk about, and of course culture, if you Google, there's hundreds of things that you can include in your culture list. Like your, what the other one, anyway, there's many lists out there, right? But it's agreeing as a team in principle, this is how we operate. So anyway, carry on. What kind of relationship people have here?
I think I've stopped about 3 or 4 cat fights. There was a lot of
so he is the complete finisher in a way.
Yeah, but at least, in our team, judging by what we've achieved up until then. Remember, we were in a class of there was about 6 groups there in the class, right here in the region. And then, hearing the feedback from the other groups, you could see that at least, we had that character in our group of working with each other towards a certain goal, because you would hear the members of other groups saying, hey, you are consistent, meaning maybe coming to school. We would speak to each other even on the WhatsApp group that, hey man, are you coming to school tomorrow? Just take that initiative to make sure that all the members are coming to class. And it worked for us, and you could hear it also from the other groups while they admired it, that, hey man, you are really, pushing and you are constant and, what can I say? Goal-driven.
Yeah.
I think we do definitely have our challenges in communication and everything, but I think when it comes to a point where we have to bounce ideas off of each other and speak critically and be honest with each other, we have that. I think sometimes we just take things very emotionally, and that's one thing we have to separate from being professional and being emotional outside of work.
Yes.
And I think we still have to build that structure, and we're still working on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna have to work on yourself. I mean, I'm generally an emotional person, and I know that about myself. So if Lucky says something that offends me, I'm going to say, thank you for the feedback, Lucky. I'm going to go and cry in my car for 3 days, and I'm going to think about it, and then I'll come back with a professional response, you know. So it is about that self-management as well. Do you want to say something?
Yeah,
Say?
just thinking of a movie I'm watching now.
Which one?
Yeah, I won't tell you anything, but interesting. So one of the main characters is the king. And his son, in inverted commas, betrays him.
Yeah.
So anyway, he got 2 sons. So both betray him. And he judges them differently. So somebody asked him why. He says, when this son betrayed me, and the punishment for the son is execution, he betrayed the king. And when this son betrayed me, his punishment was lighter because he betrayed the father. And the love of the father is different from the authority, and the love of the father is different from that of the king. So as a king, I had to set an example, and as a father, I had to work on compassion. Maybe I'm stretching it, but it's a similar what you call it, mindset, right? To accept that although I'm CEO, it comes with whatever, and this is how I need to judge. Right? And your ordinary coach, this is how you judge. Anyway, just some
as well as work ethic. You judge. Coming back to your subject, you judge people differently because you know the potential that one person has, or the work that one has put in. You go, okay, well, I can let you go for now because I've seen the work you've done, but I can't let you go because you haven't done anything till yet. Correct. I'm waiting for something, to justify this. But I think that validates it.
Yeah.
I think we had an instant where you had to step up and become a CEO seriously, because there was a 6th member in our group. So she started not coming to class, and she stepped up and said, "I mean, we're really taking you out from this group because you are not pulling your weight." And that is exactly what happened.
But they want to benefit. That's the thing. You want to benefit from what we're doing, but you can't step up and work and put in the work. And I had to be like, okay, sorry, you can't do this. And at the end of the day,
and
actually,
the second one also.
So I just want to remind our viewers, this is not something that you learn in the textbook in the entrepreneurship program, right? The entrepreneurship program that we're doing is really about entrepreneurship, right? And all the other experiences were deliberately built in so that you can find yourselves, your strengths. If you had to run this as a typical program, you write assignments, exams, get your certificate, feel very proud about it, you enter the real world, and now you're confronted with these situations. So what we've begun to do at Regent, very successfully, I think, and you talking about it, is this deliberate immersion or work-directed learning where we force you to work in groups so that you can find each other. Somebody takes a leadership role, somebody does this, So I'm feeling chuffed.
Me
that
too.
They've actually picked up something from the program outside of the core curriculum.
Yeah, me as well. And it goes back to culture, right? So what I've just drawn here is something called a culture web, right? And so when you're dealing with culture, yes, you're dealing about the stories that you tell to your stakeholders, whether it's your employees or your investors. The symbols that you have, those can be something like your logo. I'm sure you guys have a logo. Yeah, the symbols that represent yourself as an organization. And then the power structures is what you've reminded me of now. Shazia is the CEO. Somebody was out of line. This is not how we work together. This is not part of our culture. So that power structure came into play. The org structure is what I explained to you earlier on. Organizing your business into functional pockets or cross-functional pockets, whatever works for you in terms of your business model. And then the control system, what we spoke about earlier on, is your processes and your policies. And again, it doesn't have to be hectic in the beginning, but have some measures of control in place. And then finally, it's the rituals. What is it that you do together? How often do you meet? What is the the tone of those meetings, those types of things, and all of these things together make up the culture of an organization. It's important from my perspective that you're aware of this at the beginning of your startup, right? Because I've worked in other organizations where because it wasn't a core focus at the beginning, if you don't try and craft this from the beginning, bad behavior can start to become a habit. And then you realize, oh shucks, now we need to work on culture, and it becomes much more difficult to change that. So my advice to you would be to start this from the beginning.
It's a silly thing to think about, but maybe we over-regulated in corporate in terms of a clocking time and a clock-out time. COVID has certainly taught us that may not be a requirement, right? As long as you get the work done. So the main thing is getting the work done. But clocking time and clock-out time is a culture in some respect.
Yes.
Okay. Taking on responsibility and delivering on it is a culture. It's a habit that you build within. So, when you allow it to slip, that 1 day delay can become a 1 week delay, can become a never delay, a never deliver. Because, you let it slip, and before you know it, it's now, let it slip for this person, let it slip for that person. Why are you bullying me? You know what I'm saying? So it's so large and encompassing. But the point is, the entity that you're creating to some degree is a family. Maybe I'm very wrong, and I heard an interview on radio recently. So don't consider it a family because family is a different level of tolerance, right?
It's a preference. Yeah, it's a preference. What you want to call it.
Yeah. But if you don't have those rules in place, you're just in many respects setting yourself up for failure, but if not failure, conflict, and you don't want to focus boardroom drama. When really the work that you've got is serving the need or meeting the donor you know what I'm saying? This should be almost non-existent. I don't think there'll ever be non-existent. Almost non-existent. There'll always be conflict.
Yeah, of course.
I think you just have to separate
how you deal with it.
But also, sometimes conflict and tension is not bad because you need a certain level of conflict and tension in a team in order to promote innovation. Chaos, disruption. So we can't all agree on everything all the time. We have to disagree. There must be conflict. It's how you resolve it and not allow it to get out of hand and unhealthy. So that's what I'd like to say about culture. And then just to end, the last point that I'd like for us to speak about is talent management. So that's a very technical term that is used in corporate. If I say that to you, what do you think that means?
Talent management.
I think does it come with the skills that everyone possesses individually?
Kind of. Lucky, what do you think?
Yeah, the talent that is already there, knowing how to channel it towards achieving your goal as a
together.
So if you think about talent, if we can give it a synonym, talent is your employee. So your employee is talent. Whether that employee is a top performer, is a top performing talent, whether that employee is we call them solid citizens, they come to work, they do the job every day, they don't shoot the lights out, but you can rely on them. And then you might have employees that are maybe inconsistent. They still consider talent, but they don't perform consistently. So talent management speaks about understanding what kind of talent, according to how I've explained it in your business, and then how you manage that accordingly. And that then again goes back to performance management, having those discussions around the KPIs and agreeing, this is what needs to be done. Having discussions around development, personal development, and saying, okay, I don't want to be the CFO forever. I want to experience different parts of the business. But I don't have the skill to do that. How do we develop that? That is essentially what talent management is about. So when you think about talent and you think about an employee, think about the employee life cycle, right? So the employee life cycle starts off with talent attraction. So what is going to make an employee attracted to black collar? What's going to make them want to come and work for you? Because it's a two-way street. It's not just you looking for someone. They must want to work for you as well. So do you have a compelling value proposition for them to join your organization? That's the question I'm going to leave you with. No, but think about it. It's important. And then in terms of recruitment, if you want to recruit and hire the correct people, do you know what your org structure looks like? Do you know what the core capabilities are that you need? And has that translated into a job profile? When you go onto LinkedIn to look for a job, you see there's a job profile. It tells you what qualifications are required, what competencies are required, what your roles and responsibilities are going to be. You need to know what that, or the person that's applying for the role needs to know what that is, and it needs to feed into what you need. So that's the recruitment part of it. And then once you bring them on board, how do you make them feel part of this family that Hussein spoke about earlier? How do you onboard them? Right? So you would need to, tell them the stories, about your organization. You'd need to tell them what the rules are, have the performance discussions with them. How do you develop them and train them according to what it is that's required? So that's the onboarding phase. And then once they've been onboarded, it doesn't just stop there. How do you keep them engaged, and develop them, ask them what it is that they want to, what are their personal goals, how does that align to the organization's goals, etc. And what was interesting for me, which I haven't seen in many business plans, was your exit strategy, right? So we also have to understand that an employee's life cycle with an organization, there's also a separation. Sometimes people will leave because there's another opportunity or they want exposure somewhere else. How do you manage that? Is it always going to be a case where that employee is going to be upset with you? Or do you manage it in a graceful way, and do you have a plan for how you offboard them as well? Exit interviews, understanding why they leave, etc., etc.
So there is something called exit interview.
Yes, so most larger organizations do exit interviews to understand why you're leaving, how was your experience while you were working here in the organization. That's really good information to have to help you improve your operations and your business. So it's understanding that full life cycle, and I just wanted to share that with you. It's not just about bringing someone in, training them. You're dealing with a human being at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay.
Hussein, you want to...
Yeah, I've got so much racing through my mind, and maybe it's the coffee that's doing that.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know how the session. I'm going to open up for the next 5 or so minutes, Shazia and Lucky. I think here's an opportunity. Again, Kim comes with her own separate bank account and bill outside of this session, right? So yeah, ask the appropriate question. But what was going through my mind earlier was about attracting talent, right? In your particular field, you need, because you're a social cause more than anything else, you irrespective of what you pay, you need to almost find that right person for that, because your job is about heart more than anything else, right? So you need to just consider that at the point of interviewing the person, even if it is the CFO. Or even if it is potentially in the future the CEO, right? Of course, the CEO will always have or need to have heart, right? So I'm saying to you, finding the right people that bought into the mission and the vision and the purpose of the organization, so they don't become potentially obstacles, number one, and then have to continuously remind them of the purpose for which they have joined. Remember, we have a very high unemployment rate in South Africa. And any opportunity people will grab, even if they don't necessarily qualify for their position, and they'll be able to sweet talk you through an interview. Oh, I can do this. When I was younger, I took my nephew for a jog around the block or whatever it is. Yeah, so you just bear that in mind in your particular course. And of course, our viewers, depending on your industry, you know specifically what you're looking for. There are, I'm going to use the word, but I don't mean it in a bad sense. There are rightfully greedy people out there that you want in a particular business because, greedy is not the right word, ambitious.
Yeah.
There are rightfully ambitious people out there, ambition for money, ambition for growth, that you want to hire for your particular enterprise because they'll help you to take it to another level. It may not be the same fit for you. You may not want necessarily that type of ambition that you want to hire for your entity, because your role is a social role more than a financial incentive. If I'm correct.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just wanted to ask something which is maybe it's not that far from what you're talking about, but it's not really one of the core issues with anything. I wanted to know from you, ever since you have the experience of being in a company or in the top position of a company, how do you take away that feeling of doing something rhetoric? Let's say maybe I was an HR or maybe a receptionist in Regent sitting there. If I'll be sitting there for 3 or 4 years, obviously after 3 or 4 years, I would be bored with the job that I'm doing. I'm almost doing it on autopilot. I'm no longer thinking or anything. I'm just doing. So I don't know. As a company, how from asking you straight, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? How do you take away that feeling of being rhetoric or being rhetoric in a workspace?
So that's where talent management comes in. Because remember I said talent management is how you manage your talent, right? So you then in this scenario would be considered that solid citizen that comes to work every day, same time, same place, we can rely on you type of thing. Me as the line manager, me as the leader would need to be having monthly discussions with you, obviously around what you're doing from an operational perspective, but also around what your career aspirations are. So typically IDPs, individual development plans. So typically at the beginning of a financial year, I would sit down with you as my direct report and I would say, okay, this is what we need to deliver from a business perspective and from a strategy perspective. I see that you lack, I won't use those words, I see that your areas of development are A and B. I'm going to send you on these 2 short courses so that can help us with that. But in terms of your career aspirations, do you want to be a receptionist forever? And at that point, you'll say to me, no, I'd really love to move into marketing in the next 2 years. And I'll say, okay, great. Why don't we sign up with Regent Business School for a postgrad diploma in marketing? You can do it part-time over 2 years. And it's those discussions from the leadership that needs to take place as well. But you bring up a good point because the leadership also has to create the platform for the employee to be able to say, I don't feel I'm growing in my role. And so it is that two-way street. So that's a very good question. I just wanted to add on to something that I picked up from your business plan as well, because again, from what I can see, you've got your structure is admin, operations, and customer. And you said that you want to expand and grow the business. So maybe it would be good, just a thought, to think about having a new business development leg. I don't think it fits into any of these blocks, but just maybe it fits into your portfolio. Think about that. I think finance and admin go together, or HR and admin. So whether you want to outsource that, I think finance is a very important function. Something that I did learn in the postgrad at Regent Business School was that the 3 most important functions in any business is finance, operations, and marketing. Those are really the 3 core things that you need in order to run a business efficiently. Everything else is really just there for support. So what I'm also not seeing in your plan is that marketing. Marketing is very important. So those 3 circles in the middle, those are really important, and I think you need to have strong strategies around that and resource that well.
Although in defense, maybe I would say, although they may 5 people in it, some of you would have to wear multiple caps in the beginning, right? So you're fortunate that you're not the one man, one person founder and doing everything, in a sense that you've got already 4 or 5 people. But even though you have 4 or 5 people, i.e. an advantage over others, you may still in the beginning have to carry more than one thing. Ideally, you want to carry the things that you can manage and are competent with. You may not be a professional marketer, but you can just about get away with it. You may not have a qualification in finance, but at the level at which you are, you can get away with it. So because you don't want to grow invest in a structure that is top heavy in terms of running, especially again, they are a social entity.
Yes.
When you go to funders and backers for future, the 2 lines they're going to look at usually, besides everything nice that you do, is they're going to look at your administrative cost. How much does it cost to deliver your service? And it was a shaming, embarrassing figure that I recall from a number of years ago in the NGO sector, where as much of 80% of donations get spent in administration and 20% on the end product. And so entities that collect money, for every 1 rand they collect, 80 cents goes into paying our salaries and our officers and everything else, and 20% reaches the end beneficiary. But the newsletter and the advert has a picture of the beneficiary and how they're benefiting. And so just be cognizant of that, right? That you don't want to, in the beginning, have a bloated structure which you need to operate efficiently, but you could get away with just like a few of us doing it.
Agreed, but make sure that the marketing is covered by someone within the team. So ops, finance, and marketing, those are the 3 core roles that are required.
I have a question regarding just employees and inside the company. How do you deal with, let's say you have an employee, all of you share the same passion, or you share the passion of the company, but then there's one that stands out and and is not really on board with your whole idea or organization, and they're just doing it just to do it. How do you get them on board, or try to instill that passion, or try to at least revive them in some type of way?
Sure, that's heavy. So I think you have to ascertain whether it is a skill issue or a will issue. Right? And what I mean by that is, does this employee have the capabilities and the knowledge and the skills to be able to do their role in the way that you need them to? And if not, then you need to help develop them and get them to that point. If it is a will issue, then it requires a lot more EQ, a lot more time and discussion and open communication, right? And I know you did a role play earlier on. If you want to do a role play now, we could. I would say to you, Shazia, I've noticed over the past couple of months that you're not yourself since the first time you started, and I just want to get a sense of, what's going on with you, how can I support you, and again then asking the questions, do you need some training or whatever the case might be. So that's the first thing, open the floor for the discussion. And then secondly, be specific in terms of giving an example. Right? Because sometimes managers they just say, things are not going well, but they don't give specific examples. So I think it's important to give an example and say, in the meeting the other day, when Hussein said this, I noticed that your answer was a bit short and not really aligned to what it is that we're trying to work with at the moment. So give that example and then say, so please help me understand what was going through your mind at that point in time. So really your role in that instance is about listening to understand, and there can be a variety of reasons why that is. The person may be disengaged, there may be personal problems, etc. And then whatever that is, you then take it from there. if the person's behavior becomes destructive towards the organization and they start breaking the rules that you've agreed with upfront, you then have to follow a disciplinary process. But you cannot do that in the absence of having these structures in place and these discussions. So
I would have given you a different answer.
what would
Show them the door. But that's why I'm not in HR. I do the acting, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, fantastic. Thank you, Kim.
you.
I think it was really good. And I suppose anyone can benefit from a formal program or a course or short course, whatever it is in HR. I think anyone who's starting a business or in entrepreneurship, well, across everything. But I think oftentimes the neglected skill in an entity is HR.
Yes.
And by the time it catches up to them, it may be too late.
Yeah.
So, I think those are the last few words that we have opportunity to speak on. I want to thank you once again, Kim, and guys, we'll share details at some point. Register for the next course next year and do something in HR. I think you'll always benefit from it. I want to conclude this session with a throw forward to the next session. So the next session is the big one. And all of them were big, but the next one is the pitch. Because the pitch in this particular case is about attracting investors or donations or whatever it is in your case. Because without the money, there's only so much that you can do. So I'm hoping that the next episode, which will cover the pitch, will help you to then begin to understand the process that you need to go through. Although we've only had 4 episodes in this particular case, there's many gaps in between that we could have filled with other things. And we'll do that, I suppose, sometime in the future. But I think these 4, idea, product, team, and pitch, sort of covers the important ones that we need to go through.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Shazia. Thank you.